One keynote can land like an entire year's salary. Money can buy happiness when we spend it on wellness. So I was embarrassed and I was scared. I actually lied to my friends. I'm actually gonna work at the airport, cleaning bathrooms and serving drinks.
Jason Vitug is an author and speaker exploring the intersection of money and happiness. He's the founder of Frugal.com and Smile Money, platforms dedicated to financial wellness. After climbing the corporate ladder to a six-figure role, Jason walked away from burnout and discovered his passion for teaching people how to align their money with their values. He's written 3 best-selling books and now speaks around the world, teaching that money isn't everything, but it impacts nearly everything.
So within 3 years, I went from being a teller to VP of Marketing and Business Development. We're gonna select you to be the successor CEO. And I said, I think I'm gonna quit. Have you done a simple budget? The vast majority of people never actually look at their income. I used to make $42,000 a year and I was paid $35,000 for 1 hour.
Hi, and welcome to So How Much Do You Make? Jason, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is exciting.
Yeah, we're really, really excited to have this conversation about money, well-being, happiness, everything that comes with money. I know that you've talked about money, and the way you think about money is money isn't everything, but it touches everything. And I feel like you just have such a great perspective on what money is, how it affects us all in monetary ways and in health ways too.
That's absolutely right. I'm big on the connection between money and happiness,
Yeah.
that intersection, because money can buy happiness when we spend it on wellness. So that is like my jam. I love talking about this subject. This is really important for people to understand how money can be used as a tool.
How much do you make?
So just for transparency,
Yeah.
I can be paid anywhere from $0 to $45,000 a talk. So
Yeah.
like one keynote can land like an entire year's salary.
Wow. Okay. So like in a year, how much are we talking?
So I do about 4 to 5 speaking engagements per year, and you're looking at anywhere between 50 to 60,000.
I watched your TED Talk, which I really, really related to because you were talking about what it meant to even talk about money for the first time. I did not talk about money growing up. I still to this day, I don't know how much my parents made. I don't know how much. Like I just knew sometimes we could afford something, sometimes we couldn't, sometimes it was in the budget, sometimes not, but I didn't know anything that was going on. That's something that you talked about. I'd love to hear more about your time growing up. When did you first start talking about money? What was that like to not really talk about money?
Well, I mean, yeah, I grew up in a household where we didn't talk about money. We talked about everything else. So talk about the birds and the bees. We talked about politics. We talked about religion, but money was really off the table. And so my parents grew up saying, okay, we're just going to go and take care of everything that you need. Just don't ever ask us about the financial aspect of it. But the first conversation was about college and how do we pay for college. And so they really needed to talk about that because I was that go-getter. I was that high achiever. And so I did everything I wanted to do in high school in order to go to like a premier college, and eventually sitting down because all my friends were having conversations with their parents. So I sat down with my parents and said, how are we going to pay for school? And they're like, okay, well, we don't have money. We can't afford to send you to school. And that was the first conversation about money.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like they were giving me money to do chores or anything like that, and then we'd have a conversation about kind of an income for exchange. It was, we can't afford to send you to school, and this is our situation. We're barely getting by. And I already had 3 siblings in college as well, so they're going to community college. So I knew at that point, like, we didn't have the big bucks, but I thought that because of all the work that I've done in school, played sports, class president, all that stuff, that I was gonna be able to go to my dream school, and that didn't happen.
What was that like? Like, how did that I know this is now like a while ago, not to out both of our ages, but what was that feeling like?
I was embarrassed and I was scared. So I actually lied to my friends, and throughout the summer, I would just tell them, it's like, yeah, I'm excited. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be interesting. And then when they all started going away to school, they're like, hey, when are you leaving? And I go, I'm not. I'm actually going to work at the airport. And that was my first job, working at Newark Airport, cleaning cleaning bathrooms and serving drinks.
Yeah.
That was my first year of college, the real world.
Yeah. So, like, what was that experience like to kind of think that you were on this one path that you probably your whole life thought was like the right path, and then you kind of pivoted?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because we're told that there's this path to success and happiness. It's graduate high school,
Hmm.
go to college, get a job, and then you're going to be happy. And that didn't happen for me. So, like early on, I was already told, nope, this path is not for you, this
Yeah.
traditional path. And so now I look at it as a positive, and it's something that I encourage others to look at,
Yeah.
regardless of where they are in the income spectrum, not to rush into such a huge financial decision as college and figure out a different way to determine what you want out of life. And that goes back to happiness, right?
Right.
It's like we're all going to college because we want to get that dream career in order for
Hmm.
us to one day feel happy because we're doing the things that we said we wanted to do when we were kids.
Totally. This is so interesting that we're talking about college as that
Yeah.
first point of like a financial conversation, because I think for a lot of people that is probably the first time they're thinking about money, but also like in this traditional path, people are 17 years old and they're getting themselves into huge amounts of debt because like there's not a lot of knowledge about like money and loans and interest. And then you're also supposed to pick what you're going to do the rest of your life at 17. Like there's a lot wrapped up into that. Actually so important to have the time to think about what do you want to do for the rest of your life. So it sounds like that was like a really pivotal time for you.
Yeah, it definitely was a pivotal moment. I mean, at that point, it was a horrible moment. I
Yeah.
was embarrassed, I was stressed and trying to figure out like how do I afford the first year of school. And now I look at that and that has informed the way I operate.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think that ingrained the idea that the traditional path isn't for everyone. And certainly there are people that follow that traditional path and they've told me that they're satisfied with their life, they're
Yeah.
happy, there's nothing that would change. But for me, and I think the vast majority of people that I have met in all my talks and who've read my books, they look at it and they go, yeah, the traditional path isn't for me, but I was kind of forced into it and I'm stuck and I don't know how to get out.
Mhm.
And so they'll ask, like, well, how do I get out of this traditional path if I'm in my late 20s or 30s or 40s and even 50s?
Yeah.
And I go, that's income. So it
Yeah.
goes back to like, how much do you make? And like, what do we do with that income in order to buy back our time to do the
Yeah.
things that make us happy?
So what would you tell someone who's in their career, definitely established in their career, but is like, I don't know how I got here, and I'm assuming these people are not happy.
Yeah. I mean, there's a level of, so I really want to define there's a difference between the feeling of happiness and the idea of like life satisfaction. Am I satisfied with the life that I'm living? And that has a lot to do with the things we actually do. So we got the degree, we got the fancy title, we bought the house and the car. So people actually get a sense of happiness when it comes to those things. But then that feeling of happiness, like when you're laying in bed and staring at the ceiling and going, have I made all the right choices? And I'm not necessarily feeling happier that I'm making six figures, or the euphoria of buying the dream home is gone, and now I am inundated with the thoughts of how do I pay this mortgage, how do I
Mhm.
fix this and that. And so my first question to everyone's like, have you done a simple budget? And it's so basic, but the vast majority of people never actually look at their income or how much they make and also their expenses. And that is a clear picture because there's a lot of embarrassment when it comes to that. When people are looking and like reviewing their expenses, they go, I spend on that. And I go, well, it's not about judgment. Just take a step back
Right.
and assess. Like, how are you spending your hard-earned income? And does it align with the things that you truly value? And most of the time, and I've realized this, is that we spend money on things to just make us feel better about our situation. And there's so many times that I've met people who want to quit their jobs and they want to travel the world, let's say for a year, or they want to be a content creator, or they want to do
Mhm.
something else with their life. And then a few months later, they'll send me a message and go, I somehow bought a new car and now have a car payment. And that's when we don't really assess like how we're spending our money as it relates to our values.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time we create these additional barriers. And if we don't get real and we don't take a step back to assess how we're spending, it's a cycle. It's
Yeah.
a treadmill and we're never going to get anywhere. And so it's important to do that. Become aware of your income and your expenses. That's the
Yeah.
first start.
I want to go back to you were working in the Newark airport. What was your path after that?
Well, I was a hustler. So
Yeah.
yeah, I hustled and grind.
Yeah.
And so I started like serving drinks, clean
Mm-hmm.
toilets at the first class lounges. So working in the first class lounge, doing this, I met a lot of really interesting people.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I was serving their drinks, I would ask them questions like, what do you do for a living? Like to be able to afford such an expensive ticket and to sit here.
Yeah.
And they would give me advice and they would tell me, listen, like don't settle for what you currently have. Always have a dream for something better. Everything is a stepping stone. So that was reinforced with every single drink, with every plate I picked up. And from that point on, I came up with this clever idea because one of the biggest issues working with like 30 other people that work in these lounges
Mm-hmm.
is scheduling. And the supervisor at the time, that was the one thing she hated to do was scheduling because people would call her up. It's like, I can't work the schedule. So I came up with a plan and I use Excel. I'm like, oh, here's a really great way to give everyone the schedule that works for them and it alleviated her stress. I mean, that was so big for her that I removed this great stressor
Mm-hmm.
that when there's an opportunity to become the assistant supervisor for 5 lounges in Newark Airport, she selected me. And so within 6 months, I became an assistant supervisor. And within a couple months after that, the lounge manager. I mean, it was such a huge
Wow.
trajectory.
Yeah.
And yeah, and things changed with that. It was the economy had shifted and I was laid off. And so that was my first indicator, as I mentioned, to go, wow, I can't really depend on an employer. And at that point, too, it's like, well, I have a finance degree, so I should just use my finance degree. And I decided to get a job in banking. But no one told me you don't make money in retail banking. It's Wall Street. So
Okay.
I entered retail banking.
What is the difference?
It's a huge difference in salary.
Yeah.
And the fact that in retail banking, you're working in the branches.
Okay.
And so at that point, I was just opening up accounts. I worked as a teller.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I had those transactional aspect of it. And I thought
Right.
that's how I'm going to get into the high paying finance jobs.
Right.
Well, there are two different paths, and people can certainly start in Wall Street and start making really good money there. But then there's that retail banking aspect of it. But then that experience made me realize, like, I really enjoy talking to people. I really enjoy like the conversations and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. And I was a teller for a really short period of time. You're looking at within a couple of weeks, I
Mm-hmm.
became a customer service rep, then assistant manager. So within 3 years, I went from being a teller to VP of marketing and business development. So that's
Wow.
it's a short
Yeah.
period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it sounds like at every turn you're pushing past like what you were currently doing, if that makes sense. Like it sounds like you're like really putting your skills out there, really hustling and really just like not being stuck in where you are, but like you're always working towards where you want to go,
Yeah.
I would say.
You could call it career design.
Yeah.
And so I just realized that I didn't want to feel stuck. I think that just has a lot to do that I am like programmed to be a high achiever, high
Mm-hmm.
functioning.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't want to just, or for me personally, feel stuck.
Yeah.
And I always feel happiest when I'm challenged. And so when I've learned how to master one aspect of a job, I kind of want to learn the other parts of it. And then I realize like when people especially want to move up in their career, the best thing to do is like, not only should you be the expert in the job you currently do, figure out what's needed to do the job that you want to do
Mm-hmm.
and find the ways to kind of get like lean into that. And so that has like just seared into my psyche. It's learn as much as we can because then we can then eventually monetize what we learned.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so tell me a little bit more about how you got into becoming an author.
Yeah, it's a pretty unconventional
Yeah.
trajectory in the career. So as I mentioned, I became VP of Marketing Business
Hmm.
Development. I thought I reached the epitome. I had the fancy title. I
Yeah.
lived in Silicon Valley. I had the cars, the apartment, and all the things that people would look at and say, he's successful. And but when I was at home, I would think about some life choices. And if I was asking, am I really this happy?
Yeah.
And so it's important for people to understand that when I achieved all these milestones, these career milestones, and even some life milestones, I was questioning some of my life choices because at the end of the day, I was stressed, I was burnt out, I traveled a lot for work, and I realized I was like the mental and emotional anguish was leading to physical ailments, right? So when we're suppressing all this mental and emotional, I mean, it
Hmm.
will eventually show up physically, and that's something you can't deny.
Yeah.
And then there were points I couldn't get out of bed. And then I developed
Wow.
vertigo. And then I had my back was aching. And like in my 20, like late 20s, like my CEO and my fellow execs were like, "What's wrong with you? It's like you're a young buck. You should be able." It's like I don't know.
I read something recently. It was like, if you don't take a break, your body will take a break for
Yeah.
you. Um, what was going through your head like during that time? Were you like, I gotta fight through this, or were you like, this
Well, I
is
mean, being a high achiever, I was like, I
hmm
have to fight through it.
right?
And the more you fight through it, the more mental anguish you go through and the emotional turmoil,
Yeah,
and that just compounds everything.
yeah,
And so I think when we're struggling financially or we're struggling in the career that we're in, we kind of talk ourselves out of what we're actually feeling.
hmm
And all that emotional suppression will manifest itself into, again, more stress and then also the physical ailments because we
yeah,
look at the studies show that the stress are hormones, right? They're the adrenaline and they break
hmm
down and then it manifests. So for me, it was constantly going, it's asking. And then all of a sudden, I couldn't even think, I couldn't even function.
yeah,
And so I was in like this robotic mode at work. And of course, as I mentioned, like everyone can notice that I was
yeah,
not my normal perky self. And but that's the part. It's like your body's gonna tell you. Your body's gonna tell you that something is wrong and something is off. And if we don't listen, it gets worse and worse.
yeah,
And at that point, I got to the part where I was visiting doctors just to try to figure out what was wrong with me. I was on a trip out to
uh
Boston
huh.
and I missed a speaking engagement for my corporate job because I couldn't get out of bed. And then I was hauled out of the hotel room in a
Wow,
gurney, like go like
wow,
emergency
yeah,
room. And they couldn't figure out. And they said, if we didn't see you, we would say, okay, nothing is really wrong. But because I was weak, my vitals were off, something definitely was there was an issue there. And speaking with doctors in Jersey and in California, I had two different paths. It was either I just go on medication or I change my lifestyle. And so I was like, well, let me look at my lifestyle. Let me look at the food that I
yeah,
eat. Let me look at my obsession and my love for working and constantly
hmm
working. And let me figure out a way. And that's how I got introduced to yoga. Then that yoga introduced me to meditation. And then I changed the way I ate and that had like that ripple effect
hmm
aspect of it. But it was a mental anguish. And one day, my boss calls me into her office, and she goes, "We have some news." And I was actually really scared because at that point, I was calling out, and I was telling her, "Can I work from home a bit
hmm
more?" Because I wasn't feeling well, and I thought she was going to write me up and say, "Hey, your performance has tanked." And like she took this very like stoic face and she goes and she smiles. I got really great news for you. We're going to select you to be the successor CEO of this of the company. And I go, this is the dream. At 30, I'll be the CEO. And then I realized, wait a minute, I'm not sure this is what I want. So I had like a knee jerk reaction and I said, I think I'm going to quit
in that
in that
moment.
moment. And like
Wow.
her it was just the reaction. And she goes, well, wait, that's not the response I thought you would.
Yeah.
And she goes, just think it thoroughly. And I know it's a big responsibility. Just think through it. And eventually we did talk and I spoke with the board of directors and things like that. And we had thorough conversations. And that decision. I did eventually leave. It took me 6 months to leave because I
hmm
was nervous. I'm like, am I doing the right thing?
Totally.
And so I ended up backpacking around the world. So I quit my job, backpacked around the world, 20 countries in 12 months. And that opened my eyes. So I flew out to the Philippines and I figured, okay, I can reconnect with my mom's family and things like that. And so then I had this whole plan, right? It's like, I'm going to take this year off. I'm going to go explore the world and I'm going to visit specific countries because, again, high achiever, I'm going to do specific things. And so when I flew out to to Manila,
Hmm.
and then I started seeing how people were living, and although I knew people here in the U.S. Were struggling, I never saw poverty in that way,
Right.
and that affected me to my core. And then I said to myself, like, I asked myself, like, what's wrong with me? I said no to a higher paying position when people here are struggling. Like, how much good can I do if I made more money and I can help these people?
Right.
And some of them being my family, distant relatives and things like that. And so when I was flying from Manila, the capital of the Philippines, to the island of Cebu,
Hmm.
I'm in this little plane and I was having this existential crisis. I actually held on to the armrest and I closed my eyes and I go, God, did I make the right decision? Because I was like freaking out.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, and I remember this, once I land, I'm gonna text my boss and say, psych,
Yeah.
I'll be back in the office. And then so here I am in Cebu. I have my camera. I'm exploring. I'm being a tourist. I'm kind of like looking at Magellan's Cross, and I'm looking at all the old Spanish architecture. And then all of a sudden there was this mayhem, and all of a sudden I started seeing motorbikes, vans, people
Mhm.
screaming and yelling, and I'm like, what's going on? And I tell everyone, like, I'm from Jersey. I thought it was a ride, so I was like, I take a step back, and I'm just watching this mayhem of people running and screaming, and then someone notices, and I'm just standing there, and they go, run, tidal wave. So at that moment,
Wow.
I was freaking out because I'm in an island. Like, where do you run? Where do you go? So I just started running. And then obviously I'm here. Everything was fine. And what happened was there was an earthquake in the neighboring island. There was some swelling in the water, and people started texting and saying there was a tsunami,
Mm.
and it created this mayhem. And it was that point where I realized, I remember I'm outside, like swimming in the pool, and I could still feel some aftershocks. And I said to myself, I go, I wanted an adventure. And I'm certainly got an adventure. And that question that I asked on the plane, did I make the right decision? Well, I got my answer. And I did make the right decision. And I remember I went to a place called Bagan. It has like 4,000 temples, stupas, and it's just beautiful and gorgeous. And I climbed up in one of these temples and I looked out and I was like, wow, I'm living my life. Like, where's everyone else? And there was that moment I mentioned, that was that epiphany. It's like, how did I get from where I was to where I am today? How did someone from Jersey, living in Elizabeth, which is the third largest city, living the way as I did, like, how did I get from there to where I am now in this beautiful place? And it was access to knowledge, resources, and tools,
Yeah.
financial knowledge specifically. And so I started writing about it. And my friends were asking, how could I afford to do this? So I started going to the nitty gritty of the money
Hmm.
aspect of it. And I said, yeah, instead of buying a house, I used that down payment to go explore the world. And instead of owning things, I started going more minimally in order to afford things that I enjoy, or at least open up the doorways and things like that.
Hmm.
And eventually I went on a road trip. I started talking about it, and that led to the book deal. So I posted, it's really interesting because I posted about the wanting to be an author on Facebook, and a former client of mine from my previous employer,
Hmm.
who I became friends with, she reached out and I didn't know you wanted to be an author. My son works at Wiley, the publishing company,
Hmm.
and that was it. I'm like, yes, I do. And that was the extent of the conversation. And eventually I got an email 2 weeks later, 8 threads long, and it was like pushed around, sent, and all over the place. And the editor wanted to speak with me about this idea about time, money, and happiness. Yeah. And that book was landed, as I mentioned, became a bestseller. And it's You Only Live Once: The Roadmap to Financial Wellness and a Purposeful Life. And this book at that point kind of encompassed my philosophy that time was the most valuable resource that we
Hmm.
possess. and most of us squander it. And most
Yeah.
of us exchange our time for a paycheck,
Mm-hmm.
and that is fine. And but it's important for us to know that, like, if time is really valuable, like, how can we spend it on the things that truly matter? And for me, I go, well, listen, we all work to earn money in order to afford the things that bring joy and happiness into our life. And if that happens to be nice clothes, a nice car, a vacation, who am I to say that's wrong?
Yeah.
And so as that proceeded, and it led to speaking gigs, and it's been a wild journey since then.
Yeah. So from that first book is kind of what morphed into starting to be a speaker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So part of that too is pressure, right? Because as an author in a traditionally published book, to be out there and transparent, I make about $1 per book. So the book retails like
Really?
$27.95. So there are all these different costs. It might be for sale. So originally retailed for $27.95. And but when you do all the math, and when I looked at my royalty checks and things like that, and so I'm paid royalties every April and October.
Okay.
And so that is in perpetuity. So it will continue, but it's about $1 a book. So unless you're selling millions of copies, it's not something that you can live off of. And I think when people look at all these published authors, whether self or traditional, it is hard to maintain an income or a revenue stream from those books unless you're constantly selling them.
Yeah.
So me realizing that aside from the book advance that I received, aside from the royalty checks, is that I need to make more money. And that led to wanting to speak. And so as I mentioned earlier, my income from can range from 0 to 45. And that has a lot to do with I'm a very purposeful person,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to be able to offer my services to nonprofits that can't afford it.
Yeah.
And then I look at these large multi-billion-dollar conglomerates who want a speaker to come in. They can certainly pay the higher price,
Right.
which helps offset
That makes sense. Yeah.
for the nonprofits.
Yeah.
And something that I've become more open to sharing, and I knew that being a speaker was something that I could make a living out of, was when I got my first keynote speaker, and I was paid $35,000
Wow.
for 1 hour.
Wow.
So just imagine that.
Yeah.
I used to make $42,000
Yeah.
a year working 2,080 hours,
Yeah.
a year, and to be able to do that in 1 hour. And so when I go and I tell my friends and I'm open about it in social media, they go, "That's a lot. That's kind of like that's way too much." And so I get challenged, and I go, "Well,
Yeah.
I've learned my worth, but also that I've been able to condense pretty much 2 decades worth of knowledge, all the certifications, all the traditional colleges,
Right.
and work experience into an hour. So if I could help you skip through
Yeah.
20 years of work, that is definitely worth the $35,000 keynote."
You know what I've noticed too? Almost no one says no. Like you say no to yourself before you even
Yeah.
give someone else a chance to. Like I've just noticed that a lot. Like when I am telling a client how much something will cost or my rate, I get so nervous. I'm like, maybe I should like say something lower. No one's ever told me no.
Yeah.
The only like the person that tells you no first is you.
That's true. I've certainly heard no.
Yeah. I mean,
before.
I definitely have, but I should say more times than not,
Correct.
I've heard, okay.
Yeah, you know what it is? It has a lot to do with, again, that mental, emotional state that we're
Yeah.
in, thinking that we don't offer the value that we truly do.
When you were writing the first book, and I guess like throughout the books you've written and your speaking engagements, have you ever gotten like pushback? Like when you were writing the book, did like an editor say like, I don't want this in there, or this is like too radical, or have you like gotten pushback with speaking engagements?
Yeah, for the books, so I've written 3 books.
Mm-hmm.
The second book is Happy Money, Happy Life, and that focuses on the 8 wellness dimensions. And then the latest book of this financial wellness trilogy is Make Your Money Smile. And I think you can realize,
Yeah, yeah.
like, I have a theme when it comes to writing books, but that's my financial wellness trilogy. And I have had pushback in terms of, they weren't really controversial topics of it, but I really wanted to focus on money as it relates to happiness and wellness. And when they look at the traditional marketing for books, people are looking for the how-tos. People are looking for the nitty-gritty aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, there are thousands of books that exist, thousands of
Right.
books that probably will do it better than I can. And there are thousands of books that are printed every single day, but no one's having a conversation about money and mindset. No
Mm-hmm.
one's having a conversation about well-being. And that's where I want to lean into. And yeah, so I did get a bit of pushback. But then after the editors read the book, they're like, "Oh yeah, this is really interesting and a unique perspective." And I think that's why I have become successful in the field that I'm in.
So it sounds like you knew pretty early on that like the traditional path was not for you. You had this pivotal moment. You knew that like everything you'd been taught was maybe not the only way, right? But it still sounds like you're like really going against the grain, like not taking the job of CEO, not buying the house, like using that money to travel, like doing things that are like really non-traditional. How did that feel to you? Was it like feeling really natural or every time were you like, this feels kind of wrong?
Well, it's the truth is it always feels wrong
Yeah.
because when it's ingrained in our psyche and where it's reinforced in society, it really is hard. But also there is this call and there's this voice in my head that says, well, maybe you should settle down. Maybe you
Mhm.
should buy a house.
Mhm.
And none of those things are wrong. It's just now it's on my time.
Mhm.
And it's not in this arbitrary, like societal or cultural context of when I should get married or when I
Yeah.
should buy a home. It's and that relates back to money. And for me, I think it's important for people to understand that money can buy happiness because it allows us to buy back our time, and then we get to decide what to do with that time.
Yeah.
And I mean, even to this day, back to your question, I do ask myself, but I have a whole mental exercise that I go through, which is basically um, assessing and reflecting on my choices to make sure that they do align with my values. And it's not as easy as what others might make it believe
Mhm.
because of all the other external factors that plays.
Wh- and what are some of those external factors?
Well, what's going on in the world? So, like a lot of our financial decisions isn't
Mhm.
just because of what we want.
Right.
There are certain things that happen, whether it's family, it's community, it's politics, it's
Mhm.
anything. They do affect our financial situation and our decision making. And so, for instance, I reached a level of financial independence, and I'm sure you're aware, financial independence is really just when you have enough money that work is optional. And
Mhm.
so I reached that level of financial independence and then eventually living my life and then finding out that my mother had Parkinson's and then she had to retire early. And since I'm the single person in a family of five,
Uh-huh.
I was tasked with like, how can I help them? And I had the time flexibility as well. So I could bring them to doctor appointments and things like that. And so it wasn't in the cards and it wasn't in my plan that my mother would be diagnosed with Parkinson's and have this illness that would pretty much say, okay, well, I need to allocate some of my time and resources to make sure that
Yeah.
my family's taken care of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear about that with your
Yeah.
mom. How's she doing?
She's doing great because I go and I force her to do yoga, meditation,
Yeah.
and the doctors are great with her progress. And so part of that too is removing the financial stress from her and really focusing on the mental, emotional well being parts of it. Yeah.
What did that feel like for you to be able to help your mom and to help your family because of the decisions you made and really like financially?
Yeah. So it's like, what's that? Hindsight is like 2020. And
Yeah.
it's like when I look at it, it's like, okay, things happened the way they did. Because if I was in a different situation that had a high powered, yeah, I could
Yeah.
probably hire people to go take care of her and things like that. But now I look at it, it's like it's an amazing feeling to be able to do that. And I've taken her to a cross country road trip. We spent 3 weeks on the road in a minivan, driving across the country, showing her different places, taking her on the cruise. So
That's great.
brought her back to the Philippines and showed her around, like
Cool.
connected with family. So
Yeah.
it's like those things are really cool to be
Yeah.
able to do that, and that has a lot to do again with the fact of achieving a level of financial well being.
Right.
And so I know people aren't in that situation, and part of the conversation I think is really important is that you don't need millions of dollars sitting in your bank account in order to feel financially well. You can certainly have less. And as long as you are aligning that spending with the things that we value most. And I would go and tell everyone, listen, if I can't do the things or support my parents right now, then why did I work so hard? Family is an important value of mine.
Right.
And so if I say, okay, well, I can't do that, it's like, okay, I worked hard and I'm choosing not to do or
Right.
spend on what I value.
So I'd imagine that a lot of people who have read your books, who listen to you speak, maybe are feeling that tension of like, I know there's this other world out there, but I have no clue what that looks like. So what are some of the maps or guidance that you're able to kind of help people with?
Yeah, I think the most important part, and it's always missing,
Mm-hmm.
is having that vision for your life. It is so key and essential. And it's interesting, right? Because I go and I speak with a lot of financial advisors and coaches, and they tend to talk about the numbers.
Right.
Okay, let's sit down. That is important
Yeah.
initially. But if you don't know what you're working towards, you're never going to get there. And the vast majority of people are saving money to buy a home or saving money to do X, Y, and Z when they want their vision for their life is traveling the world, and they're not putting money or allocating for it. So it really is taking that time to envision the life that you want to live. And so from that point on, we can work backwards and we can look at identifying what those goals are specifically. But it's important for people to understand, and I've certainly learned this, that when someone says, hey, this is the path that I took and it's going to work for you, chances are it's not.
Yeah.
Because we have different lived experiences. There are different contexts and variables, as I mentioned,
Right.
that play a role. But what's great about seeing other people living their life is that it gives us motivation and inspiration. And that is like so essential when it comes to reaching financial goals, when it comes to career achievement or life satisfaction. It's like, what are other people doing? And I don't necessarily have to follow their path, but I want to be motivated and inspired on my own.
Knowing that there are multiple worlds out there and there isn't just one path to go down. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I love what you're saying about like having that vision and working towards it, because I think when you don't have that on your own, you do get caught up in this trap. I also was like the high achiever. I was supposed to be a doctor. That didn't happen for many reasons. I was not very good at biology. But I totally understand that and like kind of taking a different path. And I kind of remember telling my family, like, I'm gonna quit my job. Yeah, I'm like doing this podcast. Yeah, I'm like what, and like they didn't really understand it, but that's kind of the point of doing your own
Yeah.
thing. Did your family, like, were they
I'm
receptive?
I'm smiling because it's so true. My parents still don't know what I do.
No.
And it's fascinating because I would hear my parents talking to their family members and it's like, "Oh, how's Jason doing?" And they're like, "Well, he's doing okay."
Yeah.
And it's like, "Well, what is he working?" It's like, "Well, yeah, he's helping us." And I go, I'm an author and speaker, and I have my own business. And for them, it's hard to wrap their mind around it because I get to work anywhere and I'm traveling. And in their mindset and how they grew up, a job is that 9 to 5. It's that corporate title. It's that salary. And for me, they look at it, it's different. And when you mentioned like you want to be a doctor and that was ingrained. And so I was having a conversation with my mom and she goes, yeah, I just think about like if I was successful with my kids. I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, well, none of you are doctors or lawyers. I go, get rid of that mindset.
Yeah.
This is a relationship I have with my mom now. It's with all the trips. It's like, get rid of that mindset. It's just ask your kids, are you happy? Are you satisfied with the choices you've made? And we're all relatively and successful.
Yeah.
And so just because we don't have those fancy titles or the traditional fancy titles doesn't necessarily mean we're not living our best life.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting and fascinating. And so it's important to have that.
I I'm laughing. I totally relate. But then sometimes I think about it and I'm like, well, I don't even know if my parents had the space to dream about something
Yeah.
non-traditional. So, do you get people who come to you or who read your books or who like go to your speaking engagements and they're like, I just didn't even know things were possible, like that there was another world out there?
Well, yeah. So it's interesting, right? Because the way my parents immigrating to the
Mhm.
country and having the American dream and their idea of you need to work, you need to keep your head down
Right.
and just do X, Y, and Z. And so they sacrifice pretty much
Yeah.
their life in order to give me the opportunity to live my life. And but then they also had that idea that my life should be this traditional path. And so getting off that traditional path, they're like, "What are you doing?"
Y-
And certainly just having conversations with people and letting them know is that you can have your own path and you could do so with grace and space.
Mhm.
And it's one of those things. Like it's really important for people to understand
Yeah.
that we all have our own path. It's just a way for us to forge it and being comfortable enough to talk about it. And what's great with social media and
Mhm.
with books is that people are sharing their stories, and we need more of these stories out there. We need people that look like us.
Yeah.
We need people who don't look like us. We need people with different backgrounds, different places, different experiences, in order for people to say, none of those relate to me, but what I get out of it is that I could forge my own way.
Definitely.
I think that is the beauty of the many stories that are out there is that we don't have to relate with all of them. We could relate with just a few of them or just one part of one
Yeah.
story and then we can write our own.
Yeah. I it's almost like you took the words out of my mouth. Like I've said probably the same sentences you just said. Like my parents are also immigrants. They also had this like kind of idea um of what things looked like. And honestly, it is so fun to even show them and to show like my other family like these other ways to have a career, to make money and to find that happiness, which
Yeah.
is really, what they wanted, even if they didn't know that that's what they wanted, you know? So I love that. And I totally agree with social media. Like, I feel like with the rise of like Instagram and TikTok, you really do get like, I now am like watching other South Asian women who are forging their own paths and doing more non-traditional things and getting married at different times or not getting married. It's so like I love watching that and I love that people now feel really empowered to share their stories.
I love that too. I love that too. And that is part of achieving well-being is feeling that sense of empowerment. And if you get that empowerment by seeing other people living their lives, I mean, it's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And so we definitely need more of it.
We've kind of talked about a lot of different moments in your career, but
Yeah.
now how would you say things are going?
Things are going well. I mean, there's definitely still challenges. And so as an author and speaker, we work in ebbs and flows and
Right.
highs and lows. And so it is true as an author, like there are periods where I could definitely write and finish a book in a really short period of time. I've written three. I'm working on a fourth. And then there are moments where I do not know words. It's like, what are
Yeah.
words? Like I can't type. And so even with the speaking engagements as well. So that's a trajectory that I've never thought that I could make so much money speaking.
Mhm.
And that has a lot to do with being traditionally published. And in the speaking world, it is related to these corporations and those with the big bucks to bring in authors to speak with their employees and things like that. Those ebb and flow, and that has a lot to do with what's happening in the country. That's what's happening internally at their organization, and so there are these challenges. But then when I take a step back and I go, "Wow, it's I am fortunate to be able to do the things that I do." I get paid to write. I get paid to speak. I get paid to empower others to figure out a different way. And what's really interesting, right, is that these companies that bring me in to talk to their employees about quitting
Yeah.
the corporate path, it's always fascinating, but the employees love it. and it gives the HR department like some kudos. They're like, I can't believe that you brought this guy in who quit his corporate
Yeah.
job, and I think I'm going to quit my corporate job. And people during the Q&A, they would say, I have a question. It's like, I think I'm going to quit, and everyone would just start laughing. But that's not really the message, because
Yeah.
I am not against corporate work. I'm not against the 9 to 5.
Right.
They all have their place, and certainly if the right opportunity presented itself, I would not blindly say no.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's about aligning what we want and with the choices that we make. And so for that, it really is empowering.
Yeah, and I'm glad you kind of clarified that and brought that up, because I know we've been talking about the untraditional path, but that's not what you're saying. You're not saying everyone needs to forge their own. It's like everyone needs to figure out the vision of their life
Hmm.
and make the choices that align to that. And I think for many people, the vision of their life, making it success, is having a really stable 9 to 5 job. That's great. And for some people, that's not. And I think what you're helping people do is even have the space to think about what they want, and then like figure out, kind of what that looks like.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because a few years ago, we had this rush on social media about, hey, yeah, quit that job and start your own. And then eventually people got burnt out. They realized how hard it is to be an
Right.
entrepreneur, because you got to do all the work. You wear all the hats.
Mm-hmm.
And when you work for someone else, you are a piece of the machine, and that can wear you out. But then when you shift your mindset and
Mm-hmm.
you realize it's like, I can do this specific part,
Yeah.
but they don't have to own my soul and my
Right.
heart,
Right.
and I can still do a great job. I can then shift my time and focus to do other things.
Yeah.
And I think that is really important for people to understand, that I can't remember from the top of my head, 168 hours a week and 40 hours that we spend in the office, and now give or take, right, because of commute time, you can
Right.
include that. But then we have all these extra hours, let's say 40 hours of sleep,
Yeah.
all these other hours. Like, what are we doing with that time?
Mm-hmm.
And we can certainly use that time to explore a hobby, an interest, or work on a side project that brings joy and happiness into our life. And so I think the biggest mistake, and I know this now, is that when we tie our self-worth to our title, to our salary, and we started with that, and I kind of veered it, because I think there's just so much focused on, you're only valuable based on the income that you make and the title that you have, and that's all related to career. But
Right.
that's just one aspect
Totally.
of your being, and so there's so much more, and we've touched upon it throughout this
Yeah.
this conversation. Yeah.
You once again took the words out of my mouth, because that was the next thing I was going to get to, is something I've been working on internally for the last few years, is how do I take or unravel my identity from my job, from my performance, from my title. And I think exactly what you're saying. I'm like, what are the things that bring me joy? It's being a really good friend. It's exploring the city that I live in, that I love. It's
Yeah.
getting to go on one big trip a year. Like, these are so many different things. But also, to your point, it kind of is all dependent on my job too. Like, being able to take these trips, being able to like see my friend, like, that's also dependent on income, on career. I just love the way that you can separate these things out, but also understand the connection between the two. Because I think, it's really easy. And I know what you were talking about like a few years ago, where it was like, let's all quit and nothing matters. But like, unfortunately, money is still what makes a lot of things in life possible.
It matters.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that point, like, oh, yeah, everyone quit and do your own thing. And then eventually everyone goes, okay, return to work and let's
Yeah.
quiet quit, because we need that salary, we need that
Yeah.
income. And I think it's important for people to understand and I think we all know this, that our society is runs by money. We need money in order to pay for the things that are necessary, food, housing, and all that stuff. And we also need money in order to pay for the things that bring joy and happiness into our life, whether that's travel, whether it's a beautiful home.
Mm-hmm.
And so money is a big factor in that. And the way for us to get that money is through a salary or income or some revenue stream.
Yeah.
But for me, I realized what's so essential and powerful. And you mentioned it's like there are all these different aspects, like it becomes overwhelming. And I understand that. And so that's when I learned about the wellness dimensions. And I'm not sure if you've heard about it. Some people, it's new to some, and others had an inkling. And so for me, I connect money to happiness to wellness. So money
Mm-hmm.
can buy happiness when you spend it on wellness. And that's your mental, your emotional, your physical, spiritual, social, occupational, environmental, and financial well being. And what I do is I focus on the money aspect. It's like, how does money integrate in all these dimensions?
Right.
And so you mentioned about like walking and exploring your city.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's environmental well being.
Yeah.
The physical places you inhabit has a dramatic effect on your sense of satisfaction and your joy and your happiness. And so when you have a clean and a space that is nice, like at home and in your community, that makes you feel happy about your situation. It contributes to it. And how can you buy it? Well, yeah, you need money in order to live in a specific
Right.
neighborhood, in order to afford a high cost of living area. So that there is a money component to it. The same thing too with work. It's, yeah, some of us have to do the jobs that we do and we may not like it. So how can we do work that aligns with us? Well, that means that we may need to save a bit more in order to
Mm-hmm.
kind of be able to afford to quit, to explore other career paths.
Right.
And so money does affect. And I think it's easier to understand all the components when we think of ourselves in these dimensions, that you're not just one thing, you're multiple things. And when you think of yourself in these 8 different aspects, you can ask yourself, where am I strong at?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a great income creator. I know how to make money, but I'm also mentally, emotionally drained. And so now you're weak in those dimensions. So how can you shift some of your financial
Right.
health to support your mental and emotional well-being? And that might be hiring a therapist to work through it,
Mm-hmm.
an emotional coach to get you through your
Right.
emotional baggage, and things like that. So
Yeah.
there definitely is a way to get through it. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I think a lot of people will really benefit from hearing a lot of this because I think it is like kind of even going back to social media. Like, I think this is one of the first blips of time that people are being so open about struggles with mental health, burnout, feeling like a little lost. And I think it's just really great that we're even able to have these
Yeah.
conversations because it's not just you and me, obviously. Like a lot of people feel this in so many different ways. Like no matter your career, no matter um what you do or how long you've been doing it. I mean, part of the reason we wanted to start this podcast is because like money does connect us all. Money
Yeah.
is everyone can relate to money in some way. And it's as you said, like it fuels so many things, but also it can give you that access to wellness, to um these different things that bring you joy or that bring you stability or whatever it looks like to you.
Yeah, and it's again, it's important for people to look at money as a way to attract the things that they want into their life,
Mhm.
as opposed to using it for distraction
Right.
in the life that they're living. And so, the more we have these conversations, the better we get in determining what we really want out of life.
Right.
And so it is important. It's important for us to break the money taboo. It's important of us to say money can buy happiness. And I keep repeating this
Yeah.
because it's so drilled down. It's like, oh, money can't buy happiness. And most of the time, it's said by people who have tons of money,
Right.
right? It's like when
Right.
they have tons of money, they say, oh, money can't buy happiness. Follow your passion and you don't have to work for the rest of your life. I'm like, well, guess what? You could say that because you have a ton of money saved and a ton of money invested. And we have to be realistic and say, well, money is an integral part of life, and many of us struggle with it. And so once we acknowledge those things, we can then move forward and hopefully get to a point to say, oh yeah, money can't buy
Yeah.
happiness because I don't think about money.
Right.
And we can all get there to a certain degree. But again, there are all these different other factors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you've made it?
Yeah, so that's like a loaded
It
question.
is.
It's like, yeah, I do. There are moments. And I think before I used to think there was this epitome where getting published the first time was a big deal. Oh, I've made it. Seeing my book become a bestseller and appear in the New York Times. Oh, I've made it. And then every single time I've hit those highs, there's these big lows. Like, and I go, I'm a fraud. I'm an imposter. And so I've given myself grace and space
Yeah.
and say, okay, well, you know what? It's never about like the just have I made it? It's am I fulfilled?
Mhm.
And so for me, when I think of that term, like have I made it? It's like the achievement, the milestone. Have I reached the milestone? Yes, I have. But am I fulfilled? And so there have been many moments where I achieved things, but overall, I'm very satisfied in the life that I'm living and the choices that I've made. And for me, the indicator of success is fulfillment.
Yeah.
And so people can look at me and say, I travel the world. I've been to 40 plus countries. I've been to all 50 states. And they go, wow, you've done great things. But then they'll say, you don't own a car? Like, what's wrong with you? But then when I go and I go, again, it's I'm fulfilled in the choices that I make.
Well, thank you, Jason, so much. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. I think you've given a lot of us, all of us, a lot to think about. I wanted to ask if there's anything you want to plug and where people can find you.
Yeah, so one of two places. Definitely, you can follow me on Instagram and on YouTube. But I do, fair warning, I do a lot of breath work and yoga when I talk about money and life,
Great.
and so that's a essential part. And also, if you want more information on the connection of money and happiness and the financial products, I do have a platform, frugal.com, and that's PHROOGAL, and that allows you to connect to the Learn Hub resources and tools, as well as a financial marketplace, so you can find the best products and services that meets your needs. And so that is what I've created to offer people the opportunity to live their life.
Great. I love that.
Thank you.